Aha, hello world, and hello you. I am Harold Rutherford-Yack, and this here is my good friend, the console snob, Scott Bailey.
Hello.
Hi Scott, how are you doing?
Just about to cough my balls up. Excuse me.
Was
Yeah,
that
I'm
what?
good. Oh, yeah, after coughing my nuts up and saying no, I'm good. Yeah, no, actually, dry throat. Yeah, I'm good. It's been a while since we've actually sat down and talked one on one without trying to shout over each other and yeah, and all this good stuff. So yeah, as you can tell, the podcast once again we're trying to rebuild what we tried to do before live streaming, and that was a podcast. At first, Harry thought I was too volatile, so he got other random weirdos to go on his little show before he actually drafted me in. And ha, suck it, I'm still here.
Random weirdos like Ross and Tubers, I think those were
Yeah,
the only
exactly.
two.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I don't want him. He's too fucking volatile. So get these other guys in, and no.
For the record, I never actually said that, Scott.
Well,
For the
no,
way,
because even then, what was it, like 12 podcasts, and I tried to make you swear every single episode.
and this is going to be no different,
And I
ladies and
was like,
gentlemen.
just go all out, say something. You don't have to live by this bloody PG-13 barnyard animal stick, do something.
Barnyard animal. Yaks are
Yeah.
barnyard animals. Oh, that's brilliant. Oh dear, Scott. I've got to say,
Yes.
last night you cracked me up on the infected interview. I've got to say.
It's probably me at my fucking most deliverance, if you will, because, yeah, inbred jokes apparently are the new hip thing to say, I guess.
Yeah.
I
It would.
fucking know what I'm like. When I get asked something stupid like that, I gotta just say something that's completely out of left field. And with Dave purposely asking me weird questions, you're gonna expect something not politically correct. I think I delivered there, and also the fucking dropouts where I'm just sat there like, ooh, awkward. Yeah, not as good as ad-libbing as I think I am.
Yeah, those things aren't half as bad as what you think they are at the time. I have to say. Watching it back,
It
yeah,
wasn't that bad.
it's just a minor technical blip. And what's your tipple of choice tonight, Scott?
Water.
Oh, okay.
It's a
For
dry
all the
throat.
people. Oh, yes, I should introduce this. You may be watching us right now on the YouTubes. However, this is going to be ripped, edited, etc., and uploaded to the Retro Unlim Network. blogtalkradio.com/RU hyphen network. Yes, well remembered, Harryak. I don't have that written down. Ha! But yes, it's also on retrounlim.com. Or it will be when
Also,
we've done.
and it will
Yes?
be on iTunes as well, won't it? So,
Ah, yes, of course. That's the very reason we're doing this, because we're egotistical and we want to take over the world one podcast network at a time. We get on iTunes, then we take over the world.
well, it's just we it this fucking website needed a little bit of a more. What's the best word to call it? Normally a podcast is the theatre of the words and the mind, and I'm really fucking struggling at the moment to say anything fucking coherent. Anyway, yes, we're trying to bring this back and have just discussions about retro media, and also we're going to bring in some other stuff that will probably fucking wind me up, and I end up ranting like a madman for about 5 minutes at certain periods in time. But hopefully, we'll get a decent fucking show out of it.
Well, Scott, I wouldn't have it any other way, I have to tell you. We love your swearing, we love your ranting,
Oh,
and
yeah,
I may not say anything rude, but you more than make up for that.
yeah. I'm looking forward to tearing to a certain games company in the next hour and a half.
All right, with that said, shall we get started with this podcast? Yes? No? Everybody?
Yes, I
Scott?
thought.
Yes.
Okay, I thought you were going to pull something out of your hat, like some sort of soundboard, irritating noise thingy.
Oh, don't worry. There's going to be none of that
Oh,
tonight.
thank God.
This isn't Retro Unlim Live. What do you think this is? Some 2-bit operation? This is the Retro Unlim radio show. Okay, here we go. Greetings, Retro Unlimmers, and welcome to this rebooted Retro Unlim podcast, henceforth known as the Retro Unlim Radio Show. This is the August 2014 edition. We're going to hopefully be hosting this every month or so. It's going to be a bit more infrequent than the Retro Unlim live show. Hopefully act as a compliment, as an antidote, shall we say, to that overblown, bloated pile of junk. No, how can I say that? No, I'm the person who hosts it. I guess I have more right than anybody to say that stuff. And with me tonight, for this momentous first edition, I have the console snob, Mr. Scott Bailey. Hello.
Hello.
Well, hello, Mr. Snob. It's been a while since I spoke to you on one of these podcasts, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a long time, and at one point we had the greatest episode ever that no one ever going to listen to because the fucking thing broke.
I think that was the last time we actually sat down to record something over Skype, and then we thought, after that incident, never again. We'll go into Google Plus, and we've never looked back, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that was kind of off-putting because we must have spoke for like 4 hours. And we were only going to speak for about an hour and a half, and I ended up just yapping on and on about everything and nothing. And I thought, oh, great, okay, time to trim this down and send it to you to, do what you need to do. And yes, the software that I was using to record Skype was out of date to the level Skype was, so it didn't record.
Oh.
It was a blank file, and I was slightly not very amused. I think the words were fuck and a couple more words in the same sort of genre. So yeah, not very happy about that, and it kind of put me off doing these for a while.
Well, there is two good things that came out of that. Firstly, we moved over to a live broadcasting platform, which is much more exciting. I'm sure you'll agree.
It's a lot easier to record.
Yes. But also, there is the fact that show, that unrecorded show, is going to go down in legend, and we're going to talk about it for years and years and years, and say, this was the golden show. Oh, we talked about that in that special show that was never recorded, the best show ever.
The one you will never see.
Yes, the best podcast the world has never heard.
And probably a story that I don't think I ever want to repeat again. I barely can remember it. It just come out of the blue, and it's even worse than the Apple story.
Oh, right. Ladies and gentlemen, it was interesting, in air quotes. It was Get Real. Yes, he recited a special podcast, Get Real, and we've never had one since, I don't believe. But I did like your series, Get Real. It saw a return last night, actually, on the Infected interview, in small part. He had you talking about the Apple incident.
Yeah. But I find that I do that from time to time. But that title is starting to bug me. It's so fucking pretentious. I'm not important. I don't consider myself self-important or that bollocks. I just made that title for my vlogs because who wants to just hear? Oh, this is vlog for Sunday. Blah blah blah. It's like no one gives a shit. So I thought I'd put a pretentious title to it with some sort of silly tagline and just talk about stuff. And
kind of like this podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, and people seem to like it. I don't know why. Even I certainly stole that idea from Steve Benway, but Steve doesn't go as dark, I guess, as I normally do.
Well, Steve doesn't mind people stealing his ideas because he, of course, stole his ideas from me. You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, you already heard the buffering joke last night. Now I've got a new high-speed internet. I can finally jerk off the porn without looking at the fucking buffering bloody icon.
Buffer porn, they should invent that. We should do that for Retro Unlim. Coming soon to the Retro Unlim Network. Buffer porn.
Well, I can finally see about the first 10 seconds. That's as long as I fucking last.
Never get bored when waiting for a video again. Oh yeah, oh baby. And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told you we'd get blue tonight, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't PG-13 barnyard stuff.
No, it's like watching a Zack Schneider movie, 3 hours of a build-up, then fuck all at the end.
Oh dear. If this were Retro Unlim Live, we'd have a but but this is not. This is the Retro Unlim radio show, and I have to roll my R's for some reason. I don't know. Yes. Right, Scott. Let's get rolling on with this podcast.
Stop.
I'm sorry. What's our first topic on the menu tonight, Mr. Snob?
I give you the list. Professionalism.
Really? There's a
101.
list? There is a list? Well, which one would you like to start?
Okay, well, I'll start off with it's two subjects which roll into each other, and it's not retro, but as this is going to be like a semi-gaming entertainment podcast, I think it's safe to talk about it. And that's the issue at the moment with fucking Crytek. Now, Crytek was at one point a very prolific company. It made games like Crysis and the first Far Cry game before it sold off to Ubisoft, which is another company I don't give two shits about. Anyway, Crytek is in big financial trouble. And it's said to be selling off Homefront, which is the sequel to a game that came out about 4 years ago, which no one played because it was fucking crap.
Scott, did you play it?
Yes. And it was fucking crap.
So you're qualified to say that, yes?
Yeah, it was Homefront, where it was basically a Call of Duty clone. I keep saying basically, I've got to stop doing that. It was a Call of Duty clone, and the premise was pretty good, which was that I think it was the Koreans that was invading the US. It was some sort of Red Army, pick your fucking color, basically. And the premise was a great idea, but the game was just boring. And the single player especially, you could complete in about 3 hours. While the multiplayer, it was made by the same guys who made Frontlines Fuel of War, which wasn't too bad, it just fell flat on its fucking face. And it was a big flop for THQ at the time. So then, spin on to 2014, and Crytek bought the rights to that game off THQ when they went down a couple of years ago. And so Crytek thought, oh, we'll make a new game out of that old franchise for some unthinkable reason. So they're making a sequel to a franchise no one gives a shit about, and then porting games like Rise to the PC that didn't do anything in terms of sales. And then they're scratching their heads thinking, why are we going out of business? Because you're making crap and no one cares about. Alright, granted, the first Crysis game, the second Crysis games that bought, to that matter, were very, very good, and they sold really well. The whole Crysis series in general, 1, 2, and 3, sold fairly well. And then they somehow start making games from franchises that people don't give a shit about and are not going to buy into. What the fuck? Because at the moment, at that point in time, Crytek they were big hitters in this current gaming environment, and ever since the Crysis games, they've gone down to nothing. And another thing, because of Rise coming out on the Xbox One and it got pretty mediocre to poor reviews and pretty poor sales, and I own the game myself, so I can say that good-looking graphics, boring-ass game. So they're bringing that to the PC now. They're porting that over. And it blows my mind why they fucking do this. It's like, can't a company that is that talented be that fucking short-sighted?
So, Scott, do you bemoan this decline, or do you welcome it?
I don't want to watch the world burn at all. I'd rather see a games company do well and do innovative and new things with, they got to take risks. I don't blame them, trying to make new games other than what has already been made. But who at the top made these poor decisions, I do not know. The idea of this new Homefront game, which has now been sold to Deep Silver because they can't complete the game because they've got no money, was going to be an open world sort of first-person shooter, which, alright, is a good idea. It makes sense. but it's got the Homefront banner on it, so no one cares. You know, if they had this great idea for a premise for a game, why would they use an old franchise no one cared about to soil their new game that's not even come out yet? It beggars belief.
Well, maybe they thought nobody would notice. They'd just take that from there and that from there and make some sort of Frankenstein monster, and then people would not notice.
Well, you know, Shaq Fu come out and then they got kickstarted a new Shaq Fu game, so I guess my rant seems to be a bit silly because
That also happened with the Cheetah Men, didn't it?
yeah, but it's different with the Cheetah Man. It wasn't a new game entirely. It was a game that, well, Cheetah Man 2 was his own, you know, game anyway, but Greg Pravich, who runs Active Enterprises, he wanted to bring that game out to collectors. He wanted to put it in the hands of people who not necessarily wanted to play the game, but they wanted to keep it as a relic to, you know, a pretty shitty past. But yeah, you know that. Sorry.
Go on. I was just going to ask, what are your thoughts on Greg Pravich? Do you think he's deplorable for this, or do you think he's providing us with a good service?
No, he's just like, you know, what is the difference between Greg Pravich and, say, Games for 81, who brings out homebrew games on retro consoles? There isn't any. You know, I don't find him deplorable in any way. I might find him a little bit fucking off his rocker, because, but other than that, you know, fucking good luck to that guy. If he can make a living on selling, you know, less than par games to people who want to collect them as, you know, for novelty value, if you will, fucking good luck to him. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, there were a lot of bad games on the Nintendo back then, and I've never played Cheetah Men 2. It's probably horrible, but who cares? It's an icon now. You talk about Cheetah Men 2 to a retro gamer, they know exactly who they are. Not necessarily because of its terribleness, but because of its rarity, I'd say.
Well,
the story behind it.
Yeah, the story, like we talked about in a previous podcast times ago about Active Enterprises, it's the story. It's a story revolving Action 52 and the Cheetah Man and all this old stuff. The story behind it is what's compelling. The game itself is terrible. Unlike the same with me when I talk about Night Trap, and I've had so many people say, "Oh, why do you like that piece of shit game?" And yes, technically, it's not the best game in the world, but I love the history around it. It's you know, that's what I love about retro gaming in general, and just gaming in general. When you get these sort of stories that, yes, these games are not popular for the right reasons, but they're popular because of the story around them. You know, it's not about the gameplay at all. It's about the people who put time into the game. That's why people find like companies like Atari fascinating to, you know, watch documentaries about, because at that time in the early 80s, you know, late 70s, early 80s, they were invincible. They were one of the highest grossing companies in the world. And to see, you know, go peek behind the curtain of what happened behind Atari, where it was basically like the Wolf of Wall Street with fucking 2600 carts, you know, that is it's, you know, interesting to read up about and watch. You know, I find that compelling to, you know, I don't really care much about the Atari consoles. You know, I had them as a kid, but now don't really interest me. But the story behind that company is fascinating.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. There's a very, very good movie on YouTube. I think it's a collated collection of clips, actually.
Yeah.
And it's called The History of Atari or something like that. I do recommend you go and look it up. I was watching it a couple of weeks ago. It's basically about 5 or 6 interviews with people who were closely involved with Atari in the early to mid 80s and the whole story behind it. I do recommend that. Go and look it up. I won't spoil anything about it.
Well, they got that new excuse me. They got that new documentary coming up that's now was produced by now defunct Microsoft Entertainment Studio. The one where they dig up some of the Atari carts in New Mexico and finally somewhat maybe confirm that, you know, there was a dig site there.
Okay. Is that the one that's called Game Over? Something like that?
Something like that. But yeah, you know, they had Nolan Bush now. You know, they basically revolved the whole documentary around Nolan. And, you know, if anyone knows what Nolan's like, his persona anyway, he could be a baby-eating rapist for all you know behind the scenes, but, you know, his persona in, you know, the social light, he's a nice, kind, warm, genuine man, you know, so he's interesting, you know, he's an interesting character. Nolan Bushnell reminds me a lot like Steve Wozniak in Apple. You know, he was the quiet thinker. He was the one that, you know, put the logic behind the tech, while someone like, say, Steve Jobs or Jack Tramiel, you know, they're the ones who sold it. They sold their brands and made them what they are today. You know, I find, you know, his story interesting. And yeah, and you know, on a side note to documentaries, you know, quite a lot of YouTubers luckily have uploaded loads of the Icons episodes from G4, which is now shut down. And, you know, you can learn from anything from Neo Geo to Atari. And I always love those documentaries. Even though they're only like 20-odd minutes long, I could watch them all fucking day. I just find them really interesting to watch.
Okay. Kit171 says, he always found Sega to be the most interesting for whatever reason. But yeah, Atari's history is really interesting too. I think Atari's history is much, much longer. There's a
lot more storied, yeah.
Yeah, there's a longer time period to dip into, and it is actually, let's say, the generation of gamers, retro gamers that we've got now, a lot of them were growing up with the Atari, or at least had access or had played an Atari. Say, for example, me.
Yeah.
I grew up in the 90s, but I did actually play an Atari around a mate's house.
Yeah, I had one.
Consoles.
Yeah, when I had a Master System, I had an Atari right next to it. And by then, you know, late 80s, coming to early 90s, I could get a bag load of games for a couple of quid. So, you know, I must have had 100 games at least, without even trying. At one point, when I finally I finally got rid of my Atari to one of my nephews, I gave him a black sack full of games. You know, I had hundreds of them.
So like Santa Claus then?
Yeah, pretty much. It was, you know, now I look back at it and think, damn, you know, I could have kept those, but it doesn't matter now, you know. Like I said, the company behind the games is more interesting than sometimes the games themselves.
Yeah, I would agree with you on Cheetahman there. Like I said, I've never played it, but that story absolutely fascinates me. I keep coming back to it every now and again. And again, with the E.T. thing, it's not the only reason I'm going to watch the Angry Video Game Nerd movie, but yeah. I have to say, I'm definitely watching it now. He's, you know, writing a story based around that.
But isn't that a weird coincidence that this documentary goes to Mexico to dig up for cartridges, finds them, and then at the same time, the Angry Video Game Nerd movie has the same plot line going through it? It's just such a weird timing and coincidence, you know. Of course, the Angry Video Game Nerd movie was made 2 years ago, so it was just a weird coincidence to me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Probably won't end up on UK cinemas, but hopefully it'll be on VOD or something. I would love to finally sit down and watch that movie.
Yeah. Is it such a big coincidence, though? Is it not some massive marketing move on behalf of the nerd? Well, actually, I do know that he started writing this movie almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, very long time ago.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily in the public eye at that time, although it was a bit of an underground thing, if you'll excuse the pun. It's definitely an underground thing.
Well, yeah. Well, no, it's always been an urban legend, and now that sort of urban legend, even though, you know, there was evidence pointing towards that ever since it happened, it's now weird to know that it somewhat is true. I can't imagine it's all ET carts, because from what you saw in the pictures, when the workmen found these cartridges, they were, you know, different types of games altogether. So they were literally like taking cartridges from like their storage warehouses and just dumping them in the hundreds of thousands. You know, it wasn't just ET carts. And yeah, it's just really, it's such a weird thing to see, you know. I think everyone was in love with the urban legend, but now it's somewhat been confirmed, and it's, some people, you know, I find it interesting. I'm really looking forward to watching that documentary. Other people just seem to just want to shut their eyes and pretend it never happened, which is really weird.
No, I can't see why you'd want to do that, especially when it's something so iconic as this. You've got to embrace this stuff. These are the things that take retro gaming out of its corner and move it into the more mainstream. So, say you'll open the Sun newspaper to page 5. I never read the Sun, for the record.
It
But
was.
it's
It was
there.
on. It was on like very close to the front page of most national newspapers. I remember that on one of them. I think it might have been, say, the Daily Star, which is basically the Daily Sport with less nipples. It was on the front page. Yeah, so it transcended, gaming and geekdom and all this bollocks. It was actually, it was a social, talked about news, news post for a little while. It was, pretty cool to see.
I think it's the whole treasure hunt thing, especially with the Sun readers. They like to think that they can go out into the garden with a shovel and dig up a load of ET cartridges or something. But on that point, it's interesting. Even though they buried like hundreds, maybe even thousands of these cards, there's still millions of them hanging around. Everybody who's got an Atari has got ET.
Yeah, I haven't though, but yeah,
Oh right,
I
okay.
I haven't got an Atari console. I just find them overpriced at the moment. But yeah, it's ET is synonymous with being the worst game of all time. Blah blah blah. I've done a gameplay video of it. I think we've all done one. It's one of those games where it's, for like it or love it, it's iconic. It's one of those games that some people think was the fall of Atari, where literally it was a lot more factors in that one game alone. It's like, again, it's an icon. It's an iconic game for all the wrong reasons. It's not the game itself. It's the history and the story behind it.
Well, would you say it's one of the worst games of all time, as everybody seems to brand it?
I wouldn't even really call it a game now to the standards. It's not a bad game, but it's not even a game in my eyes. I've seen a lot more recent stuff where it's not fit for purpose, and so in perspective, I would probably say games like Watch Dogs are even worse than ET, because
Really?
Watch Dogs was a complete mess. It was delayed beyond all belief, and when it finally came out, it wasn't fit for purpose, and that's my point. My logic in that is, yes, ET may have been an incomplete mess, but at least it was somewhat playable. Watch Dogs, I couldn't play it for the best part of a month because of the amount of fucking bugs in the game. I couldn't even start it on my own computer. That's how fucked it was. So apples and oranges, basically. I think ET, yes, it might have it tanked royally. It was, a terrible selling game. But for no help, well, Nolan Bushnell was one of the people who coded that game, and he would tell you point blank that he just didn't have time. He had to do that within a few weeks, and he said you can't really make a decent, coherent game in that space of time. He needed at least 6 months to 8 months, and sometimes a year for most of these Atari games to be, come to fruition. So you can't really blame the craftsman for the craft, because if the people above him are not giving him the time of day to make this game, then you're going to expect something below par. Well, on the opposite end of the spectrum, with Watch Dogs, they had ample fucking time to make a game, and they still couldn't do it.
Good point. Good point. Kit171 says, it makes sense though. If you needed to dispose of a mass amount of stuff, the desert is good for that. And that's what the guy said happened. He was
Yeah, but
instructed to just dispose of it, and it wasn't very far from where they were made.
the thing is as well, especially where they were based in Sunnyvale. I keep saying, I was about to say Sunnydale. That's from Code Monkeys. I love that show, but it's ingrained in my brain. You can imagine Atari is based in Sunnyvale. You would have thought they would have buried it closer to home, and there is rumors that actually there was stuff, cartridges buried around that building, but now you would never be able to dig on it because of course it's been developed and stuff. There's other stuff in that area now.
Well, Scott, we have to try. We have to get our titanium reinforced shovels and dig, dig, dig. We have to get those things that Shredder uses out of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to burrow into the earth and get these games and then say, oh, it doesn't work. Chuck it in the bin.
Maybe that'll be the sequel to the Angry Video Game Nerd movie. He goes to Sunnyvale to find more ET carts.
I'd pay to see that.
Yeah, because that was the main argument for years about that whole situation. Is that they were pretty much broke. It's going to cost them a dickload of money to transport all these games to New Mexico. It seemed like a counterproductive. And even Nolan Bushnell, he said in his own words that it sounded a counterproductive idea to begin with. But then they found carts, so that. He didn't know where they were. He was probably he might have known a little bit more than the rest of us, but he was still pretty much an outsider when it come to the dumping of the carriages.
Well, Kit171 and Custado both say that E.T. for the Atari 2600 is not the worst game ever.
No.
Kit171 says it's just sloppy, rushed, and boring.
Well, like I said, it was that game is as good as what time was given to it. A few weeks. Well, like I said, with Watch Dogs, that was given like 5, 6, 7 years to make a game out of, and they couldn't fucking do it. So.
Okay. In those terms, would you actually say it's a good game for 3 weeks?
No.
Oh, good. I thought you were going to say yeah then.
Well,
considering it's a good game.
Considering what like recent indie games can make in a very short space of time, no, not at all.
There's a lot worse indie games out there now, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, like Fez. Anyway,
okay, I will just check the comments on this topic, and then we shall move on to another one. What do you say?
Yeah, go on.
Retro Unlim says, Shaq Fu is the worst game ever. Thank God Stuart has them all. He's collecting them all in his basement.
Probably make a coffee table out of them.
Yes, I know that. I would pay to see. Sorry, that's becoming like a catchphrase. I won't
Well,
say it
on
again.
another tangent, Shaq Fu, even though it's very pivotal in my gaming life, if you will, I bought that game because it looked cool in the magazines. I saved up like a good 2 months worth of pocket money to buy that game on a Mega Drive, and it brutally disappointed me. And that's where my suspension of disbelief comes from. But ultimately, it's a game that's lost to the annuals of time. Who gives a shit, basically?
Well, Shaq Stu does, obviously. He's got them all.
Yeah, but he just does it to troll people. He knows it winds people up, so that's why he plays up to it.
I actually have one copy that was destined for Shaq Stu. I intercepted it at Play Expo a couple of years ago. In fact, no, it was earlier this year.
Yeah, I gave you my copy.
Oh, is that actually the same copy that you reviewed in your
Yeah,
video?
the Super Nintendo one.
Is that the one that you had as a kid as well?
No, I had it on Mega Drive, yeah.
Well,
when I bought that Super Nintendo, I bought it about a year or two ago. It come with the fucking console.
What sort of prices can you get on Shaq Fu these days, considering everybody's burning them?
Pennies, basically.
Oh.
Pennies on the pound.
Now, they're more common than E.T. In fact, if you dig up Stu's back garden, you find 1 million of them.
Yeah, but the thing is, say with like E.T. had history behind it, Shaq Fu has no history. It was the combination of 90s obsession with hip basketball players and really stupid tie-ins. After Michael Jordan hit big with Space Jam and various other media, they thought, oh, we'll put basketball players in games, and also probably one of the worst superhero movies of all time, Steel. So yeah, fuck him, basically.
Well, you say that Shaq Fu doesn't have a history, but it certainly has a future, because it's going to have a sequel coming out very, very soon, ladies and gentlemen. Right.
Whoa, hold the brakes there.
Oh, you want to jump in on this, Scott?
One question, and it's a rhetorical one. Kickstarter, so they make a pitch on Kickstarter to make a sequel to Shaq Fu, which is going to be more like a Streets of Rage style beat 'em up, other than a one-on-one fighting game. Who the fuck funded that, basically? Who thinks that it's going to be any good. I really don't think there's going to be anything good coming out of it. And also, when I was checking the pictures of the game, there was blatant assets ripped off from Street Fighter 4. But that's all I'm going to say.
Huh.
What I'm saying is, if you funded that game, you're part of the problem.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you've backed that game, screw you! We hate you on the Retro Unlim podcast. You're banned from downloading it forever. Go away.
You're part of that fucking problem.
Go and bury yourself in Shaq Stew's back garden. Well, on that subject, I do suspect some of those backers were fans of the legend, and others were fans of Shaq. Maybe they saw it on the Angry Video Game Nerd and thought, I'm having a piece of that.
Yeah, but the thing is with Shaquille O'Neal, he has no redeeming features. Basically, he was a massive basketball player, and I mean massive as in big brick shithouse bastard of a fucking massive. He wasn't exactly a great basketball player at all. He just made a name for himself because he's a fucking... He's basically a Sasquatch that's been strategically shaved. That's all he is.
Brilliant analogy. I love it.
So, you know, he makes... And then he thinks he's a fucking rapper, and he brings out probably some of the worst hip-hop albums I've ever heard in my life, and quite a lot of people would will testify to that. So, I don't know. I don't get it. I really don't get it. Anyway, moving on.
Okay, on the subject of bad games, Kit171 says, and this could be a good topic to move into, Rise of the Robots is a good contender for the worst game of all time. Scott, what, in your considered opinion, of all the games you've played on this channel and in your life, would you say is the worst game you've ever played?
Oh, one that sticks out in my mind. I must have been about 18. It was on the PlayStation 2, and it was going to be a new chapter in a very well-renowned series that was originally on the PlayStation, the PC, and the Saturn, and it was a massive success. It also spawned a pair of movies. And I had a girlfriend at the time, and she bought me this for my birthday. And it was delayed, so I had to wait a few more months for it. And I finally got it on the PlayStation 2. I took out the package. I put it into my console, and within 20 minutes, I got stuck on a lever that you couldn't actually pull to lower a platform. And I start losing my mind, thinking, well, how fucking hard can that be to do to program a lever being pulled and a lever coming down? I don't fucking get this. What the hell is it all about? And then it had stealth, sections that were completely broken. The controls were crap, and that game was fucking Tomb Raider: Angel of Darkness. And till this day, it blows my mind how terrible that game is. I haven't played it since though, so it could be a perspective thing. I may play it now and have more patience with it. But at that fucking time, I was the biggest Tomb Raider fan. I loved Tomb Raider. It was, at that time, my favorite game to play. I would play them non-stop. Every single one I would play from start to finish. Not a big deal. And that was a massive disappointment. And but at that point in time, once again, same with like Crytek, that game alone killed Core, who made the original Tomb Raider games. It killed them off in one foul swoop. So they put so much time and effort and so much money into this game, making it, because the premise, once again, was a great idea. They were trying to make a Tomb Raider game that was more broad and bring in, a newer audience to a series that was garnered a pretty, hefty following. And it fell flat on its fucking face, and I mean royally fell flat. And to this day, it ruined them. It absolutely ruined them. And we didn't get another Tomb Raider game for, I think, nearly 6-7 years later. And that was done by Crystal Dynamics. Because at first we was like, oh, I don't know. After that sullied my whole premise. That sullied my whole perception on Tomb Raider. I just didn't want. I didn't want to know. and I finally started playing it again. I think when Tomb Raider, it's that one with a cover where she's just dressed in black and all you see is her tits, basically. Underworld, Tomb Raider Underworld. That's when I started playing it again, and I thought, okay, it's starting to gain momentum. Then, of course, that new rebooted Tomb Raider come out the last year or two, and that game's fucking amazing. So it took a long time for me to get back into a series that I adored so fucking much. So yeah, Tomb Raider: Age of Darkness will be without a doubt the most disappointing game I've ever played.
Well, that is proof that a franchise or a brand can live much, much, much longer than the companies that develop it. How it can change hands, and people forget
Like
the original developers. I haven't played that game, so I couldn't say. But if you'd have to ask me what the worst game I've played is, I've not played a lot of really, really bad games. I hated Double Dragon 3 on the NES.
That game was fucking impossible.
Yeah. There was a part that you got to, and I always got stuck. I think you were fighting some guys in a dojo or something.
Yeah, but it's a beat 'em up with no continues. It's like, you can't fucking complete that game on one fucking credit. You cannot do it. What the fuck were they thinking? Basically, the quite angry video game nerd.
Yeah. The biggest disappointment of all is that the first two were so great, and then the third one, just the black sheep of the series.
Yeah. And
go on.
Yeah, no, there's nothing to say there. And saying that, the same sort of premise as well was Battletoads.
Alright.
Everyone loved that game for some reason. Fuck knows why. Because it's fucking impossible.
Well, I loved it up until about the third or fourth level. I was probably too young to get any further. I was too bad at video games.
Fucking even now, it's unbelievably hard for no good fucking reason, other than I guess it was a short game and they need to make it as hard as fucking possible for people to try and complete. That's it.
Okay. But I would say there is a game worse than Double Dragon 3 that I've played. And I don't know if you could describe it as a game, because it's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, the first edition on PS1.
Those games are so fucking pointless.
I know. They're not really games, they're just quiz show simulators, and this particular one wasn't very good at that.
Well, I'll be honest, I did own the Weakest Link and one of the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire games, but still, they're fucking pointless.
Well,
they really are.
Weakest Link is far, far better than this version of Millionaire, because you've actually got a digitized or an FMV version of Anne Robinson, who says, "You are the weakest link, goodbye."
Yeah.
But in Millionaire, you don't even have a digital Chris Tarrant. It's just an empty studio, and the camera just pans around in it, and there's a ghostly voice of Chris Tarrant comes from nowhere. "So, welcome to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Get in the hot seat and win £1 million!"
Oh, God,
Invisible audience applauds.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Like, yeah, I remember that shit.
It's, I guess, with me, I love the game. I love the TV show so much that I expected the game to be the same. But there you go. It was just a rental, £4 from the rental shop, but it still annoyed me.
So that's your most disappointing game. There's got to be more, because you played a lot of ZX Spectrum stuff, and there's got to be a lot of shuffleware on there.
Well, yes, but you know what you're getting yourself in for with those sorts of things. But I was 14 at the time, and I bought this game. I saw it in the magazines. It said, #1 in the charts for 25 weeks running. Go and buy it now. I've no idea why, because it was just terrible. I think that's one of the things that I hated most about it. The fact that even the magazines said, "Oh, it's #1 in the charts, you better go and buy it." They were lying to us through the teeth so we'd go and buy this game. There's no reason for them to.
Yeah, but the thing is now, the gaming industry that is now today, they thrive on that minutia where people just like, nah, they just don't care about quality anymore, and that really bugs me, because you get so many of these AAA so-called games that come out, and they're not fit for purpose. They're really fucking not. But people buy them in droves, and then that leads to developers and publishers thinking, you know what, we can put out any old shit and sell it. That's why movies like fucking Transformers thrive, because they're not, alright, granted, I did like the fourth one. The fourth one was a fucking big improvement to the other three, because there's no Shia LaBeouf. Sorry, I always get his name mixed up. But anyway, people, they thrive on the minutia because people don't care. They just like, oh yeah, we'll buy it. It's a new addition to whatever. It doesn't matter. So companies thrive on just selling people half-baked shit, and people buy it in droves, and that depresses me because you're supposed to be paying for quality, not crap.
Well, it is a bit depressing, but at its heart, it's how business works. You've got the big developers who can probably afford to go out there and make a vanity project and throw all this money at a game. But then you've got these hundreds of smaller development companies who, let's say they don't have the money, they don't have the budget, so they've basically got to do the best they can under the constraints. And then the marketing department has to hype it up to all hell. And I guess that's where the issue comes in, and the fact you're paying the same price, pa-ching, as these top quality AAA titles from the big dev companies.
Yeah, it's and well, like I said, now, yeah, all right, quite a lot of games back in the 90s, early 80s. Yeah, there was a lot of shovelware, a lot of crap. You look at consoles like the CDI and the 3DO, they were havens for just cheaply made, poorly thought out games. And yeah, if they made a buck, it made a buck. If it didn't, it went to the dustbin of obscurity. But now it's sort of got to the point where dumb and subpar level productions seem to be the tasty snack of the day, and I don't get it. I really don't fucking get it. Like I said, I'm not one of these people that wants the world to burn. I'm not, but I would love to see a fire put underneath people's asses, and hopefully we get some hungry people who want to be creative and want to push the boundaries, and or just want to make fucking decent stuff, like decent games. It makes me smile to see like people who Unreal making a new Unreal Tournament game. It's pretty much a throwback to the classic Unreal Championship games, but they are doing it for the love of the original games, and also they want to give a game for people who want to play it. They want to give it to the fans. They also want to give it to them as polished and as detailed and as playable as possible. And you don't really see that anymore in mainstream gaming, and that's where the indie crowd start to come in. But the problem is with indie crowd, and this is one of my favorite words, so you're going to hear it a lot, there's a ton of pretentiousness as well. There's a lot of people who think they're making this wonderful art when all they're making is some really awkward, boring games, and they've forgotten how to make. We want to play fucking games. We don't care about walking through a field of nicely rendered grass with some sort of haunting fucking commentary over the top. We don't give a shit. We want to play a game that's entertaining. Like, say, like a company, I think it's Way Forward, who made Shovel Knight and the remake of Strider and DuckTales. Those games are, even though that a couple of them, well, all three of them are retro throwback games, they are games that people want to play because they are fun to play, rather than games like, and not really bashing on these games because one of them I actually really like games like Flower, Journey, Gone Home, and all this stuff. I really love Journey. It's a great mix of game. It's very ambient and relaxing. But other than that, it's one of those games where you probably play once and you're one and done. You're not going to go back to it. There's no redeeming features. It's just like a very pretty picture to look at for a few hours, and then you move the fuck on. And I think mainstream gaming has forgotten where the games are. People are now too complacent to see what the fun side is. I've played games in recent times where I have felt absolutely nothing for them. If I felt anything for them, it would be depression. I've played, well, one for example would be Battlefield 4, and I played Battlefield 1942 and Battlefield 2 to absolute death when I was younger. And yes, they haven't really evolved from that sort of build, from that framework. But I look at Battlefield 4 and see just a bloated, convoluted mess. And it's not because of the technical aspects, it's just because it's right there parallel with the minutiae of people who find that game entertaining. They're too scared to try anything new, and they're too complacent to try anything new. It's depressing to me, When I saw DICE make a game like Battlefield Bad Company, I was like, oh, actually, they're going interesting. They're trying to put some comedy into a series which is pretty much straight-faced. And I thought, oh, okay, I can get behind this. And then Battlefield Bad Company 2 comes out, and it's the same sort of premise, And I thought, okay, they're bringing in some sense of humor. This is kind of fun. They still had the same standard gameplay, but they had an entertaining overtone to it. And then Battlefield 3 and 4 comes out, and it's just that, pastel grey generic shooter, and it sort of killed my buzz, if you will, And we all try and chase. It doesn't matter if you're playing an 8-bit game or one on the current console. You're always trying to chase the fun. You're trying to chase the high all the time. And yes, most of the time you're not going to get it again. But when you do, man, that is the best fucking high ever. It's the best drug. When you're playing a game, you're so fucking into it, and you're playing it, and you're playing it, and playing it, and you're loving it. That's the best feeling ever. You want to sleep yet?
Oh, sorry, no. Well, there's a couple of issues there. I take you back to what you said earlier about art in games. It's been a problem since the very beginning of games, I guess. The graphics don't maketh the game principle. Because in those days, as we all know, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have TV programs to show us these games. So we just had to rely on what we saw in the magazines and these epic screenshots of the latest 3D graphics, etc. And then when we got it, it was a load of rubbish. But those graphics, historically, have sold the game. And this continues to be true in this day and age, I believe. And also, on the point of these shovelware titles, etc., and the Call of Duty clones, the Battlefield nonsense, maybe that's what people want. You say it's quite sad that this is what people want. But that's just the way it is, I'm afraid. That's the way it's going. And I think it's always been like that as well. We're just repeating the same thing over and over again. Right, let's take a look to see if we've had any comments on these topics. Okay, Kit171 says Battletoads / Double Dragon is fantastic. I've never played it, but I do believe it is Battletoads with Double Dragon sprites. Have you played that, Scott? And am I correct?
I haven't played it, no, but yeah, it is interesting, but no, I haven't played it, unfortunately.
Well, Kit also says he gave up on Battlefield after Battlefield 2, which was the last one he really liked. And Costado says, oh, come on, don't bash games like Flower. I rather like them. It's not like they take away from your AAA run-and-gun titles. Oh, don't open up that debate again, Costado.
Yeah.
The old, our game's art. Oh, shall we have that discussion now, Scott? We might as well for the reboot. Get it out of the way on the first ever show.
Games are art. There's a fine line between games being art and games being entertaining. And yes, games like Flower are, if you are entertained by pretty colours and weird puzzle mechanics, then fine. I'm not here to fucking ruin your enjoyment. If you enjoy that game or enjoy any game that I've talked about and I don't really care for, that's fucking awesome. It's yours. But my point of view is that people have forgotten what is gameplay and what is art. And there's a few companies that are towing the balance between both of those, and they're doing it really well. But there's other people who make games or games companies who go either one or the other. I'd rather play a game that looks like absolute shit, but I'm having fun playing, rather than looking at something that's really beautiful and I'm not playing the game at all. It's finding the fine balance between the two ideals.
Right. Well, I think, Scott, that nobody in the art industry, from my experience, actually knows what art, in inverted commas, is. Everybody's got a different opinion on it. So you could bring this argument up for pretty much any game. Oh, this game's far too artistic for my liking. But then you've got those games, like you say, that fuse the art. I'm trying to think of some good examples of this that have got
I would
really.
say, top of my head, games like Ease, recent games like Bastion, uh, games like Borderlands. Yeah, that was very, between arty, like comic booky, and gameplay. It's it's those sort of games where they have an art style which is really striking, but
Yeah,
also is a decent game. While there's other games where you're sitting there bored out of your mind, clicking a button when the game fucking tells you to.
right. What about stuff like Mad World and the cel-shaded Zelda games?
Once again, I really enjoy Mad World, by the way, but that's because I'm borderline psychotic. Um, I enjoyed Mad World for its art style. Actually, be quite honest with you, when it comes to Mad World, that was kind of distracting. Black and white. Yes, they were trying to go for a black and white look to make the blood look as bright neon red as possible. But I found that sometimes the black and white got a bit too much. So for a case in point, a game like Mad World, sometimes the artistic approach got in the way, become distracting.
Right. Okay. I've never actually played Mad World, but I've seen videos of it. And what console is it on? Is it
On
on
the Wii,
GameCube? The Wii.
the
Right.
way,
Okay.
yeah, it's one of those games that it was. And it was an interesting experiment, the best way to call it. It was I forgot who made it. It was published by Sega, but it was done by, I can't remember now. But it was one of those games where it's on the Wii. They can't really do a straight gore fest game. Well, they did. Some games were like House of Dead Overkill in, say, Manhunt 2, but they were trying to make a more stylistic, like Suda 5-1 style game. And for the most part, it worked. But like I said, sometimes the art style did become distracting. It's like watching a 3D film that, like, I'll go back to Transformers 4. The 3D was, for the most part, good, but when the shaky cam started coming, I just felt like I was having a migraine coming on. So, the visuals got distracting. And that's the same with Mad World.
Well, like you say, it is a very, very fine line. Kit171 says, Okami is pretty much the only literal art game that I know of, at least. And the art didn't get in the way of the gameplay, which, as I've said for so long over the years, gameplay, here, is greater than the graphics. It's the entire reason you play games to begin with, the interactivity. The issue with art is it's completely subjective, with no concrete rules as to what is or isn't. In
Fair
the
point.
in the end, games can be and are art. I 100% agree with you on that. It is an art form, but I guess the argument is, does it class as fine art?
Yeah, but I
But
think that's going into that bloody territory again where people with wispy beards and rimmed glasses go into art galleries and shrug their chins over is Call of Duty 4 a Renaissance what the fuck ever. I don't get that point of view. Games are meant to be fucking played, not stared at.
right,
And when it comes to that sort of, and I'm going to say the word again, that sort of pretentious point of view, I can see people think games are art and they want to see them as art, but it's not an art form that, from a traditional sense, it's not like a watercolor painting or a fine orchestral score. It's something different. It's something new. It's something that hasn't really been tapped into before.
right.
It's something completely different, and it should be treated in a more interactive and a more looser light. It's
Yeah,
not. It's not like I said. It's not like a watercolor painting that's apparently some sort of masterpiece.
yeah,
It's going to have a lot of flaws. There's going to be a lot of things that will be flawed, but in the end, it's an entertainment product. You're there to be entertained in an interactive sense. So a painting doesn't give you that. It's not going to grab you by the collar and drag you into the world, aha, take on me style, is it? So when it comes to this argument of are games art, you got to take the level of, you got to be more realistic about the art behind the game, because in the end they've been built. They have been built to be entertaining, not just hang on a wall and be extremely expensive.
Well, I tend to think that video games are art because in 100 years' time, people will look back on this era and say, yes, that was an art form. People will study it. There'll be whole degree courses and PhD courses about it.
Yeah.
People will do television shows and documentaries about it. They'll study it. And I think we're just a bit too blind to it right now. It's all a bit too new. Video games have been around since 1950s, maybe even just a little bit earlier. Commercially since the 70s.
Well, yeah, let's be honest. It really started in the late 70s, the arcade machines and Pong and whatever.
That's right. And I do think that, yes, I will say yes, video games are art, but not as we know it. There we go.
Yeah, it's an emergent art form which really can't be put on a pedestal yet.
That's right. People didn't talk about Picasso till after he died. Or at least he didn't start earning money till after he died, which is the biggest irony of all. Costado says, still think you're confusing art and graphics here. Well, Costado, what's the difference?
Bottom line is, I think you're not understanding what I'm trying to get at, where it's not a painting. So that's enough of that subject. Let's move on.
Yes, because we're seeming to rile a few people up with this. So, we have a few more prepared topics, don't we, Scott? Let's pick one out of the ether. Right,
Well,
here we go. From PC Gamer, Rise, the Son of Rome, is coming to PC this fall with 4K resolution boost. With 4K resolution boost.
well, we've already touched on the subject when we were talking about the fall of Crytek. It's, once again, a game that didn't do very well for Crytek, and they think, oh, we'll re-release it and try and get our money back. Pointless.
Ah, yes, I should have brought this up earlier when we were talking about that, shouldn't I? Well, it's got a very good picture there, so it looks very
It's a very pretty game. It is really pretty, but the game behind it... We're getting this argument again. It's a pretty game. It looks stunning and beautiful, but the game itself is fucking boring, so, judge it as you will. Move on.
Judge it as you will. Don't judge a book from its cover, or maybe do. Who knows? Are video games art? We don't know. This answer will never be provided. Let's move on. Okay, let's have a look at some comments, shall we? We can get them up.
No, we got other topics to cover. Comments can wait.
Yeah, screw you, commenters. Yeah, because we're just going to dip back into video games as art, aren't we? If we look at the comments.
Yeah, and I'm bored of that conversation, so let's move on.
Alright, something completely different to video games now. Here we go. A story on comicbook.com. Warner Brothers announces 9 new DC Comics movies after Batman vs. Superman. And the Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice film is going to be released in 2016, apparently. I don't know.
Yeah, you look at this. This story broke out about an hour or so ago. I saw on the website there, and this is how desperate Warner Bros. And DC are getting. They know they are fucked, basically, and I hate to say that because, well, it's not on my wall anymore, but there was a massive Batman poster there, and I had to move over there because my fan got blown off, but, details. I love Batman. I've been a Batman fan ever since I was about 6, 7 years old. My first experience of watching Batman was on TV with Adam West. And, of course, I was a kid back then. I didn't really see for what it was. It wasn't a dark description of the man in dark armor, but I love the idea. I love a guy running around in a costume saving people, and that struck a chord with me. And then around about that time, on video, I got a copy of Tim Burton's Batman, and that pretty much changed my life straight off. Just boom, everything changed from there. And since then, I was a fan of the Bats and also of comic book heroes in general. I just found the escapism of that art form to be pretty awesome, and it took you places where in your head would never be possible. And and especially I gravitated towards Batman, especially because he wasn't super in any way. He didn't have any superpowers per se. He was extremely intelligent, and of course had a lot of money. He can make a lot of gadgets. But I liked his well, back then as a kid, I didn't know. I just liked to see him in a black cape punching people in the face. But now I can appreciate him for what he is. You know, he's intelligent, he's super intelligent, and he always has a means to an end. And you know, that character to me has been fascinating for all this time. And of course, you know, I've been along with the ride, the highs and lows, especially when it comes to his theatrical releases. So now we're in an age where David Goyer, who has openly taunted various comic book characters in the past, even though, you know, tongue-in-cheek foreboding, he has an iron grip over the script of Batman v Superman. And even though this is so awkward, because I don't care for David Goyer's fucking talent, he pretty much doesn't have any in my eyes. He seems to find great ideas and ruin them, and that's his shtick. He was like Man of Steel, and you know, if someone's going to bash me about Man of Steel was a fucking mess. It was terrible. It had great ideas, and the look of the movie, from an aesthetic point of view, an art point of view, if you will, the movie looked amazing. But the rest of the film was god awful. They tried to make a dark Superman, and that doesn't fucking work. You cannot put, like, say, on perspective, the Dark Knight trilogy. The Dark Knight trilogy worked because it was dark and edgy, and that's very Batman. It was very Frank Miller Batman. Trying to apply, so David Goyer takes that idea and tries to apply it to Superman, and it fucking fell flat on its face. Fell flat on its face. And I don't care who disagrees with me there. It fell flat on its fucking face. So now they move it on to Batman v Superman, and this is the film where they're trying to build the whole DC universe on. And they're banking Scott fucking Schneider, or Zack Schneider, sorry. Scott Schneider, bloody hell. Anyway, Zack Schneider, he's trying to build this whole empire, if you will, even though the original trilogy of Dark Knight movies did really fucking well, apart from the third one may have, you know, alienated quite a few people, even though I like that film. They're trying to build a whole universe over one film. It's not going to work. It really isn't. You know, I want to see a decent film, and as well, because, you know, this time, the new movie, Batman is being played by Ben Affleck, and I'm probably the only person in the whole world which I kind of like that idea. I like Ben Affleck. I'm a big fan of the View Askew-verse, so early films he was in, like Mallrats and Chasing Amy. You know, he has acting chops, and he was in one of the best movies that's come out in years, was Argo. He was in that, and he was fucking amazing. So, to see him become Batman is a cool concept, but the talent that surrounded him, especially in the writing and directing, I'm very, very skeptical about, and I really don't think anything good is going to happen. And like I said, they are banking this whole fucking 9-picture bloody schedule on this one film. And that's how short-sighted and how much Warner Bros. And DC have dropped the ball when it comes to these comic book movies. Because they see the success of Marvel, and Marvel at the moment really can't do anything wrong. All right, the films may be starting to, you know, show signs of repetition, even though I love Guardians of the Galaxy, I love Captain America: The Winter Soldier, but, you know, you can tell that momentum is starting to stale. They need to they'll probably do what they do after the first Avengers movie. When the new Avengers movie next year comes out, they'll probably bring out new characters, the new spins on stuff, and it will just carry on. Well, DC are trying to build up all this momentum on one film to carry over to 9 other films, and I really don't think it's going to happen. I really don't think it's going to happen. They would have to pull the impossible to do this, and I would love to see it happen. I really would, but I can't see it happening, especially with Zack Snyder and David Goyer at the helm. I really can't. And you got to sleep again.
No, don't worry, I'm still awake. Well, I'm looking at the list, or the supposed list of these films to come out, and actually, there's only one title so far. The rest are untitled. However,
Exactly.
a separate article I have found here says that Nikki Finker, who is she? She's an entertainment journalist, a veteran entertainment journalist at that, has attempted to predict what these titles will be. We've got July 2016, Shazam, Xmas 2016, Sandman. What's that? 6-month gap in between.
Yeah,
May
but
2017, The Justice League. July 17, Wonder Woman. And then after that, Flash and the Green Lantern team up, and Man of Steel 2.
Man of Steel, yeah, right. That post I find completely silly because, all right, Shazam I could see happen, but Shazam would have to be a later film. They'd have to get a Justice League movie out of the way. They'd have to get a Green Lantern or whatever team-up movie. They'd have to get a couple of team-up movies out of the way before they would bank on a Sandman movie or a Shazam movie. So someone putting those predictions I find ridiculous. But the post in question, this what started this discussion. Well, one-sided. You just seem to agree with me on everything because obviously you don't know what I'm talking about half the time.
No, I'm not a huge fan of comic books.
But the fucking thing is with this whole list is that there's nothing confirmed. It's all like July 2016, July 2017, July 2018. There's nothing set in stone. So like I said, they are basically pushing all their chips onto this one movie and hoping it's a success, because if it isn't, the whole idea will collapse onto itself.
Well, Scott, you've got to remember, it's just a story and it may not be true. It's just something that people put out there to build hype. As you should know by now, Mr. Snob.
Yeah, the post is completely pointless. It really is completely fucking pointless. And I saw a few people commenting on my Facebook page earlier, and it's a pointless post. It's just there to build up hype. And
exactly.
That hype train is going to have to gain a ton of momentum for me to be interested in a DC universe, which is sad because, like I said, most of my comic intake for years, until about, say, 13, 14 years old, I was a Batman fan. I loved reading Batman. And other than that, I'd probably read a couple of Thor comics or Deadpool. Batman was my mainstay. I loved Batman.
You still have a lot of Batman comics.
I've converted most of mine to annuals. Once again, it's one of those things when you turn a certain age, you think, I don't need any of this stuff, and it ends up in the bin. And I hate to admit it that most of my comics as a kid went the way of the bin, unfortunately. But it's one of those things I've come back and thought, you know what, I miss my childhood, so I'm going to go back and see it. And I buy annuals to keep up to date with, comics. I don't really buy them singly anymore. The only comic series I've been collecting, and it's not particularly that great, is the Wolverine and Deadpool comic line, which is funny at times, but it's nowhere near the quality of other books.
How did the annuals work? Are they just truncated versions of the main comics throughout the year, just abridged?
No, normally it's a series of a certain storyline in one go. Like I've got Deadpool's Wade Wilson's War, which covers that whole, I think it's a 12-issue run, and it's all in one hardback annual with, a couple extra things. So I like reading my comics that way. It just feels like I'm actually reading rather than looking at picture books.
Oh.
to the outside looking in, basically. You know, I could read comics anywhere and I don't really give a shit, but
You'd just slip a Harry Potter cover over there and nobody
you
will
know,
ever know.
even now that even though comic reading is more acceptable in common, you know, consensus of people, yeah, there's still that stigma of some people think, oh, why are you reading comics as a 30-year-old, you fucking child, you know. I don't really give a fuck about them people, but I like buying annuals because they look cool as well and they feel substantial.
I guess they've expected you to move on to Harry Potter by now. By the way, they're just graduating onto the Beano, those sorts of people, I have to say. Kit171 says, the thing that amazes me is that Wonder Woman is going to be in the new Batman vs Superman movie. I think it's the first time in a very long time that that character has appeared in something. Although I think there was a mostly forgotten Wonder Woman movie made in the 70s or something.
Oh God, yes! Wow. But that's the thing. It's sad to see this because a character like Wonder Woman, especially when it comes to a female perspective, Wonder Woman is probably the most well-known female superhero. And once again, Zack Snyder's pissed me off with his portrayal of Wonder Woman. Not bashing the actress who's going to be played Wonder Woman in Batman vs Superman. I can see her doing a decent job. And I'm not really bagging on her look either, because Wonder Woman herself is an Amazon. You know, she's a 6-foot tall, muscly woman. You know, she can handle herself. But her outfit in this movie just feels wrong. Like I said, they're going for this dark and moody approach. And Wonder Woman, for the most part, is a lot like Captain America. She should be in red, white, and baby motherfucking blue, you know?
Yeah.
And in this film, she looks like an extra from fucking...
Gladiator.
Yeah, Gladiator, or like his other film, bloody... that one with the girls in Sucker Punch, you know? Even though I think people are just quick to bash the movie, and like I said, I'm trying not to go overboard on the fucking movie, but stuff like that, posting pictures like that will rub up the people who love those characters. It'll rub them up the wrong way. You know, if you want to do like the Avengers, let's take Joss Whedon's Avengers for example. They had him in for the best part, apart from say Thor, he didn't have his helmet on, which bothered me. They had him in the costumes, in their proper costumes. Even though some people didn't like Captain America's, baby blue costume, they had him in the outfits that made him iconic. They didn't go for this gritty approach. They give him the comic versions of the outfits for the most part. So this whole trend within Warner Bros. And DC to make everything dark for the sake of making it moody is unbelievable, because Marvel is not doing it. They're playing up on the jovial and over the top color palette, while DC and Warner Brothers think grays and browns and blacks are the way to go. And I know this is a very facetious argument, but inject some color into it. It's a fucking superhero movie. This is not Schindler's List. Make it fun.
Noir.
Yeah, make it fun. It's you've jumped the shark. You've jumped over the chasm of superhero movies and stuff like that. It doesn't matter now. You don't have to make everything dark and moody to make it watchable. Like I said with the Avengers, they didn't do that. They had them in the costumes. They were brightly coloured, and no one batted an eyelid. And in fact, I think most people found more enjoyment because they were in the costumes they've seen them in, reading the comics for all these years. So that's two entirely different companies. One playing up to the audience, while the other one seems to be appealing to another wider audience that really don't get the characters in the first place.
Okay. So, I think we should move on to matters retro once again. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, go for it.
Yes. Just before we do, hi Colo CPC, how you doing? Right, this year is the 25th anniversary of the release of the Nintendo Game Boy, which was not the first ever handheld console, but it was certainly the best, and that's what we're here to discuss tonight. We have, from the Guardian website, 25 fun facts about the Nintendo Game Boy, some of which are probably false, but at least one of these is going to be true, and we're going to go through these and see if they are.
Well, if you got it from Kotaku, probably all of them are fucking lies.
Well, it's actually a very dry article, this. Here we
All
go.
right, okay.
Game Girls. Ironically, considering its name, Game Boy was also one of the first games machines to successfully target female players. In 1995, Nintendo claimed that 46% of Game Boy users were female, a major leap from 29% on the NES, and this has remained a cornerstone of Nintendo's marketing and design approach.
Yep. Yeah, I can fully give that a thumbs up because I got my Game Boy when they first come out, and I think my sister had it for a good 6 months.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I can attest to that. Yes, that's without a doubt fucking true.
Yeah, a lot of those games are quite cutesy. Even stuff like Super Mario Brothers with its flies and its Super Mario Land with the Easter Island heads, etc. Very cartoony, very kiddie. Link to the Past, crikey no, I'm
Yeah,
getting
but it
all the
wasn't
game
really.
names wrong.
It wasn't the aesthetic.
Link's
Yeah,
Awakening.
but it wasn't really those games that drew that audience in. It was mostly just Tetris and puzzle games. That was very early. It's funny now because considering what we have like with Candy Crush and Plants vs Zombies, Bejeweled and whatever, the Game Boy really, saw that market very early. It was a complete fluke with games like Tetris and other puzzle games, but you can see a little bit of the future with the Game Boy when it comes to what we have now with tablets and phones and whatever.
Do you think we're a little bit snobbish these days when we look at Nintendo and say, oh, that's a console for kiddies and girls? Also sexist, actually, in that manner.
Yeah, but the thing is with Nintendo, here we go, another tangent. Now, in this day and age, they play up to the kiddies. They most of their games are, advertised for children. So it's not really a stigma of Nintendo. It's Nintendo making the stigma.
Right. Well, there is that gap in the market because none of the other consoles have gone for that or even tried. You've got the Xbox 360. Well, from the last generation, you got the PS3 and the Xbox 360. Neither of them even attempted to sell to kids. Oh, look at these games like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty. Then you got stuff like FIFA, which kids are more likely to like, but generally, sports games.
Fucking sports
I know
games.
you hate them, so we won't talk about that sort of thing.
Fucking pointless. Go outside and play a football, not fucking kick it indoors on a console.
Well, have you ever actually tried to play a sports game, like, say, FIFA or any sort of football game on the Wii with the nunchucks?
No, but I am. Even though I just said that comment, I will recede that comment a little bit because one of my favourite sports games, if you will, is NHL. I love ice hockey, and it's always fun to play. So, I do have a little bit of space in my black heart for sports titles, but other than that, I don't particularly care for that genre.
Scott, it isn't your fault that you hate the sports games. It's EA's fault. I'm going to come out and say they were great back in the day. They made these fantastic games, but they did, and they still are hammering that stuff into the ground. New roster releases every year.
That's the thing.
Really necessary.
They are pandering to the minutiae of the current gaming environment, like I said.
That's right. They're asking for a kick-in from people like you and I. Well, maybe not I, because I like football. But even these days, I won't go and buy a FIFA game. The last FIFA or PES game, Pro Evolution Soccer game, that I played was in about 2008.
Yeah. And that's where, the sinking feeling comes in. Like, well, I'm just buying for a roster update every year. What am I doing?
30 quid for a roster update. 40 quid.
I was like
even.
that as well with Tiger Woods games. Before before he had a problem with the missus and the busload of mistresses. But whatever. I love golf games as well. I'm a big fan of golf games for the most part, and the Tiger Woods games like 2003, 2004. I love those games.
Oh, Scott, you should play the modern Tiger Woods games from the last few years because they feature hidden Easter eggs where you can go off the court and start beating people up with golf clubs. Allegedly. Oh, phew.
South Park joke.
So, back to the Game Boy. Let's have a look. Here we go. The Game Boy in space. In 1993, cosmonaut Alexander A. Severov took his Game Boy along the Soyuz TM-17 space mission to the Mir station, and the console orbited the Earth 3,000 times before safely returning with its owner. And it was included later in an auction of space travel memorabilia held at Bonham's in New York. And
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I seen that picture.
Yes, it sold for $1,220. $1,220.
Isn't there another Game Boy where it literally survived? I think it was like a shooting of some sort. It was in a game shop window,
Yes.
and it got beaten to absolute shit and shot and blown up and all that, and it still worked.
Yeah, that's been doing the rounds on the internet in the last few months, hasn't it?
Gunpei Yokoi, who made the Game Boy, really, really saw the ball coming. You know, it's amazing how that console, even though it was pretty technology-wise, it was, you know, behind likes of the Game Gear and the Lynx, but it hit such a nerve with people at the time, and you know, it became insanely popular even to this day. And you know, even though, like I said, I'm not the biggest Nintendo fan in the world, when it comes to the Game Boy, if there's a console that deserves all the praise in the world, it's the Game Boy. You know, they really made something out of, they made something that transcended genre, transcended gender. It was a huge success, and you know, people, including myself, have fond memories of it to this day.
Yeah, here's to the Game Boy. Just on that actual Game Boy that survived the bombing, it survived a barracks bombing during the Gulf War and currently resides at the Nintendo World Store in New York City.
Yeah, that's it.
And it still works.
Yeah, that blows my mind. You know, if you put a 3DS there, it would have snapped in half in the wind. You know, so. Like I said, when it comes to, you know, people piss and moan about it, it's not, you know, cutting edge technology, but for what it was, it worked, and it was you know, a really, really interesting time in that time of gaming, and to this day, like I said, it's still got a very rabid and cult-like following.
Yes, and also, here's another interesting fact. The Game Boy is a favorite instrument of chiptune artists who use who use vintage video games hardware to create electronic music. Now, the reason I bring this up is because one of our members, Mr. Rich Higson, recently released his new podcast series. It's actually a pilot. We encourage him heartily to continue it and make it into a fully fledged series. And that is called Chippy Chips, yes, and that is all to do with chip tunes and chip music. We encourage you to go to the Retro Unlim Network, download that, and tell him to continue, because I've only seen one.
Yeah, sorry.
Go on.
I really would love to be on that show one day with him, because I want to talk about the tunes from like Doom and games like that, because emulating like metal and death metal sort of tunes into MIDI files is just amazing to me. So I would love to, I listened to his show this morning actually, and it was really, really cool. It's something that I haven't seen anywhere really. He's tapped into something that, you know, could be really interesting to watch, listen to, whatever.
Actually, yes, you say that. He could turn it into an actual show that we could pitch to the TV networks. Let's do it right now. Let's go and write a script for him. Or not. You didn't like that, did you not, Scott?
No, I just, you know, the infinite amount of 8-bit themes that come out of everywhere, you know, even like current music gets turned into an 8-bit chiptune. You know, there is people who love, you know, they love that kind of music, and so for him to make a radio show based around that, basically is, you know, to me in my head, is like the top 40 pop songs of the week, but in chiptune style, and it's a cool idea. I like it. It's unique. It's better than listening to my ass fucking rant on about DC and all and Crytek and shit.
Yes, go and download it, ladies and gentlemen. Links are in the description, as usual. I'm only saying that because I can't be bothered reciting it. Oh, go on then. blogtalkradio.com/RU-network. There we go. And to clean up some comments here regarding sports games, Kit171 says, "Hey, NBA Jam/Jam to Ye are fantastic. The only sports games that I like, that and Golden Tee Golf 3D, the trackball makes it awesome. I didn't know there was a trackball golf game."
Ah, there must have been, but yeah, he's definitely got a point with NBA Jam. Great game as well. I think I preferred it more when I was younger than I do now. I can't really wrap my head around NBA Jam anymore, but yeah, definitely a great game to check out.
Yeah, it was a lot better back in the day, but I still quite like it. And JL76 Gaming says, "I love sports games. I love Tiger Woods games, especially 03 to 05 ones, when they were more fun." Ah, he agrees with you, Scott, on that.
Yeah, they were fun, especially when you could charge up a shot and you have like a running fucking drive, and it was not a simulator. It was more silly, and I liked that. And now it's gone back to its usual boring ass roots, and I lost interest after that. But yeah, those early 2000s Tiger Woods games were a blast to play.
When I want to play a golf game, I just play PGA European Tour on the Mega Drive.
Oh yeah, I like that as well.
You can't want any other sports games after you've played that.
No, my personal favourite golf game is Outlaw Golf on the original Xbox. I always seem to go back and play that for a few rounds. It's always good fun.
I think I know what you're thinking of. Does that have nudie ladies in it?
No, it doesn't have nudie ladies, but it's
No.
It's like playing golf on a trailer park. It's that sort of idea. Yeah,
I'm gonna hit that small white ball with my stick.
There is a lot of provocative, people in that game. But yeah, it doesn't take itself seriously, and it plays a decent round of golf. So that's all I really care about.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. On the Game Boy, Kit171 says he used to play his original Game Boy Brick a ton. He had a lot of fun with that thing, and he wishes he still kept it. And then Game Freak came out with Pokemon and put the thing on the map. The rest is history. The Game Gear, the Lynx, and definitely not the Gamecom had a chance.
Yeah. Good old... Sorry. Carry on.
No, sorry, that's the end of the comment.
Yeah, Gamecom, Tiger Electronics. If there was a company that brought out more fucking electronic tat, it was fucking Tiger.
The Game.com is how they styled it.
Yeah,
but I had to call it the Gamecom.
I remember one year I got a console for Christmas called the Tiger R Zone, and you strapped it to your head, and in a same sort of roundabout, lazy way, it was sort of a bit like a Virtual Boy without the 3D. You'd have like a clear plastic screen that you would put over your eye, and the cartridge would slot into basically your forehead of the thing on your head, and it would beam it and reflect it back onto this clear plastic.
Oh, right.
But the thing is, my eyesight, I'm long-sighted, so anything closer than, say, that far away from my eyes, it's blurred. I can't see shit. So trying to play a Tiger Gamecom, this thing, a couple of inches from my eyes, I could see it.
I think I've seen a video of this, Scott, yes.
Yeah, and the games as well were basically just like the Nintendo, what they call them, the ones they had before the Game Boy, the little mini games they had, like the Tiger Electronics sort of games, those sort of Game & Watch sort of style games. And so, but a lot friggin' worse than on a Tiger console. So, and it was endorsed by, I think it was Batman Forever or Batman and Robin. So, yes, the Joe Schumacher era of Batman movies. So, that was a match made in shitty heaven, if you ask me.
Match made in hell.
Yeah.
The Tiger R Zone, more like the Tiger Arse Zone. Am I right?
Yeah.
Hey. Fantastic. Well, Scott, we've had an awful lot of fun tonight, but I fear our time is coming to an end. Is there anything that you'd like to bring up, any other topics that you'd like to speak about before we finish this
No, I
reboot of the Retro Unlim radio show?
no, I feel very cleansed. I probably pissed a few people off.
Yes.
I've hopefully got people talking. I'm not here to troll people, but I do like to chat about everything and nothing. So if you enjoyed it, thank you. If you didn't, well, that's your problem.
Yes, we all love listening to you, Scott, and I feel tonight has done you a lot of good in the way that it's cleansed you, as you said. You've let off a lot of steam,
Yeah,
and you're
I
going to be
agree
a
with
more zen, relaxed person for the rest of the week, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna turn off right now and spank it until I fall asleep, and I'm gonna feel great.
Oh dear, that is not a picture that you want to be creating in your head, just as worth finishing, ladies and
If you
gentlemen.
want to see art, turn on a black light in my room. It's going to look like a Jackson Pollock painting when I'm done.
Oh, we can't finish on that note, Scott. Say something positive.
Um, Free Kevin.
Who's Kevin?
I don't know.
That's the most random thing we've said all night, and we've said some pretty random things. Well, you can tell the time's coming to a close now, can't you, ladies and gentlemen? So, tune in for the next edition of the Retro Unlim radio show. I nearly said Retro Unlim Live then.
Nah, Retro
Whenever,
podcast. We will
whenever
find
we're...
out what is the name. We'll put it down at the end, yeah.
Yes, tune in again whenever we're back. We don't know when that might be. It might be this time next month. It might be this time next year, next decade, who knows?
I think the idea of trying to shoot for every 2 to 3 weeks, so yeah. We'll
Yes.
try and shoot for that, and hopefully we'll see you on the next episode of the Retro Unlim Radio podcast. Good show, awesome. Yeah.
Yes, that's the plan, ladies and gentlemen. So for now, we shall bid you a fond farewell and good night.
Good night.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Indeed.
Also, here we go. Oh, nobody will get that, will they?
No. Lost episode.
Right, guys, thank you for watching. That has been the Retro Unlim Live podcast. We basically just cut it there. We're going to chop out that bit and upload it to the Retro Unlim Network. This is a sort of post-show type thing. Let's see if we've missed any comments. This is not going to go on the network. We've had loads of comments throughout the course of the night. Right at the beginning, Smooth MJ said, "You're live, by the way. Also, hello." I think he said that when we were just rambling about nothing.
Yeah, we were just getting into our little zen before we started, yeah.
Yeah, that's what we usually do, or what we used to do on these podcasts. We used to warm ourselves up for 10 minutes before the show, and then just say, "Are we ready to go now? Let's go." So, if you tune in for the live editions of this show, that's what you can expect in the future. Retro Games 1979 said, "Speak up, Harry." I did believe that my audio was low, but apparently it wasn't. I'll fix that in the edit. Don't worry, can fix everything in the edit. So thank you very
Everything will
much.
be fixed in the edit.
Yeah, there is going to be an edit, I promise. And Retro Games 1979 says, "Good show, guys. Cheers, Shaq." Okay, I believe that's everything. And thanks everybody for tuning in live. We had Smooth MJ, Retro Games 1979, Kit171 Costado, Mr. Retro Unlim himself, Steve, and JL76 Gaming, and Colo CPC, of course. Thank you all for tuning in. Retro Unlim Live is going to be back soon. Tomorrow we've got the Two Fat Bastards. They're going to be on the Two Fat Bastards channel, as usual.
1.5.
What's happened to the half?
Well, Woodland's lost a lot of weight, so there's only 1.5 now.
It's like 1.5 men.
I was advertising.
1.5 fat bastards.
Yeah.
Oh, one skinny bastard and one not so skinny bastard. What did you think of Carl's appearance on the Retro Unlim live stream last week, Scott?
Scary. Really
Scary.
fucking scary.
Yeah, he scared me too. I thought he was being serious when he told me off. Apparently I muted somebody.
All I saw was a lot of tuckers.
I don't know what you mean by that. Do you mean
Ass.
backsides? Yes,
Yeah.
I thought you did. Oh
I
dear.
was like, he's talking, next thing you know, he's twerking. I'm like, what the hell's going on? It was like watching a French porno. You don't know what the hell's going on. You know something's erotic's going on, but you don't know if you want to tug off to it or not.
Oh dear. Retro Unlim says, moving on. Good show, gents. I'm glad you liked it. We're doing this all for you, you know.
Get a
Yes.
shameless plug in while we well, get a shameless plug in before we sign off. Yeah.
Yes, dear leader, please don't sack us. We'll be good. We won't do anything naughty, we promise. So yes, this show, the Retro Unlim Radio Show, is going to be basically myself and Scott and maybe a guest in the future. So we are welcome. We do welcome applications to be guests. Although it's not a formal application, just say, hey, we'd like to come and chat with you
Yes, it
for one of
is.
the
And
episodes.
text made payable towards me, and you might get in.
Yes!
No guarantees.
Of course, just leave comments in the usual places. You know where they are, because I don't. Oh dear. Right, Scott, do you think it's time to leave now?
Yeah, it's time to dig yourself out of that hole. You know, tenuous link. Time to
Yes.
sign off.
Yeah, dig myself out of that hole of Atari ET games, indeed. Yes, thank you
They
very
might
much.
drown you beneath that fucking pile of carriages after what I've come out with earlier.
I'm going to travel to America and dig some up. Although, we should do the UK version of this, where we go to Stu's back garden and just dig up the Shaq Foos. Ah, treasure hunting.
No,
Brilliant.
dig up all the fucking skeletons of dead babies at the bottom of his garden.
Oh, Stu, what have you been doing?
The
Jeez.
skins of dead children drying in his attic. Well, that's how he afforded all those fucking Mega Drive cards.
That's why all the dogs are gathering around his garden and barking, trying to dig up the bones.
It started once again. The war of treasure between me and Retro Games 1979.
We may reprise this on the next show. Retro Games 1979 Stu will get you on, and it can be a beatdown of some sort. The Retro Unlim beatdown.
That's good fun.
Good fun indeed. Thank you and good night.